I said that if Labour was elected to govern, we would work in partnership with you to deliver on every one of our missions and change the country together. At the moment I walked through the door of Downing Street, our work began. And that door is now wide open to you. And today's summit is the first of its kind ever.
Welcome to this bonus episode of the Third Sector podcast. I'm Lucinda Rouse, and with me is Emily Harle.
Hello.
And we're going to spend a few minutes on the topic of the Civil Society Covenant, which was unveiled last week by the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, at the Science Museum in London. The Covenant is a document that's been in development by government and civil society pretty much since Labour came to power last July. It provides a framework for them to work in partnership to address society's biggest challenges. And the Prime Minister says it will give charities a home at the heart of government. And as you just heard, the door to number 10 is wide open to civil society, according to Keir Starmer. Along with the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, Lisa Nandy, and a clutch of other cabinet ministers were in attendance, along with a whole host of charity leaders. Emily, you were also there. What was your main impression of the event?
There was definitely a buzz among attendees at the event. Most of them were charity leaders, so they've been waiting for this covenant for a long time. And it's been a huge topic of conversation at pretty much every sector event I've been at. But to me, it seemed that the Prime Minister's appearance took many delegates by surprise and gave reassurance that the government is actually taking this partnership seriously. As well as the encouraging appearance of so many high-ranking government officials, civil society leaders such as NCVO's Sarah Elliott were also centre stage. And we did also have Matt Hyde, Lloyds Bank Foundation's chief executive, who did a fab job of emceeing the entire event and keeping everything on track.
Excellent. Those are the people that you need. So, in a nutshell, what are the main components of the covenant? It's been developed by government and civil society together, and it consists of 4 principles. First of all, recognition and value. Respecting the independence and legitimacy of civil society organisations to campaign and not treating organisations that oppose government policy less favourably when it comes to funding.
And the second principle is partnership and collaboration. So that means better communication with civil society, seeking insights and expertise from civil society organisations to inform policy. And for this to happen, there needs to be a definite culture shift. We need to address barriers that exist to delivery, including through long-term funding arrangements wherever possible, which is also included in this principle. 3
out of 4 is participation and inclusion. That involves several measures, including working together to co-produce solutions with affected communities. And also a really important point under this principle is furthering diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives, particularly in the face of seeing such initiatives rolled back on the other side of the Atlantic. And then the final principle is transparency and data, which is something that the charity sector has been calling for so long. This means that the government will provide feedback to civil society organisations after working with them on policy and funding decisions, and charities themselves will be proactively transparent and accountable for the money that they receive. And there's also measures in here to improve data collection across the board. And of course, one way that the government has already pledged to support that data collection and measurement piece is the additional, I think it's £8 million uplift that the Charity Commission received in the spending review a few weeks ago. So that was a very brief rundown of the 4 principles contained in the Covenant. You can, of course, read the full document on the gov.uk website. We have also done quite extensive coverage of the Covenant and reactions from various sector leaders, as well as an extensive analysis piece that was published last Friday, written by you, Emily, and Andy. For me, I think one of the most interesting elements is that partnership and collaboration piece, and also the recognition that there needs to be a significant culture shift in order to enable civil society to provide their insights and expertise to inform policy going forward. Obviously, that's going to be easier said than done, and I'm really looking forward to seeing exactly how implementation is going to happen.
Absolutely. I do think that that is really key to ensuring the entire covenant works, is that respect and that value of civil society. For me, one of the most interesting inclusions was the protection of charities' right to campaign, which includes the right to peaceful protest. And personally, I was a bit surprised that they went as far as to include the right to peaceful protest within that principle. But it is also worth noting that this comes just after the government banned the protest group Palestine Action as a prescribed terrorist organisation. And there's also been a variety of anti-protest measures implemented in recent years. So Lisa Nandy said the government is not planning any legislative action in this area to repeal these anti-protest measures. So whether this protection for charities' right to protest actually holds water remains to be seen. It's also important to note that under this principle, charities that do disagree with government or hold them to account are protected. So in the Covenant, the government has said that they will not treat charities that have disagreed with government policy any differently. They will not ostracise them from conversations. They will not exclude them from funding opportunities. And that's really key because sector leaders have been telling us, both behind the scenes and on the record, that this is a really major concern for them. When they're holding the government to account or they're working in cause areas that are more controversial, it's difficult to maintain that positive relationship with the government. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes moving forward and whether the dial actually shifts.
Yes, indeed. And of course, perhaps the elephant in the room is, how are we going to pay for all of this? There was mention of the government providing longer term funding wherever possible, but you just can't get away from the fact that the voluntary sector has been subsidising government service contracts, local service contracts for years now, and that's really not a sustainable way of working, and it certainly doesn't seem to be an even partnership. There was a media huddle where you and a couple of other carefully selected sector journalists had the opportunity to ask, I think it was one question only, to the DCMS Secretary of State, Lisa Nandy. Let's hear what you asked her, Emily.
NCVO research found that more than 87% of charities were subsidising public service contracts with their own income. And that's been a major concern within the sector for a long time. How will you ensure that the sector is paid fairly for the delivery of the vital work that they do?
I think one of the first things that we did in the Cabinet Office was to reform the way that we do government grants and contracts so that it's clear that when charities are delivering services on behalf of the state, not only are they properly remunerated for that, but that they have a right to speak up. We've been very concerned about gagging clauses in contracts that have stopped charities simultaneously being able to deliver services and also to speak up to improve those services and those systems that, based on the knowledge and expertise that they have. Appreciate that, life has been very tough for a lot of charities over the last decade, and they have had to step in where the state has been absent. Also appreciate that has also been the case for local government, and it is still the case for national government as well. And I'm not going to pretend to you that overnight we're going to be able to find the money to be able to rebuild our public services just in weeks. It will take time, but we're not wasting any time.
She didn't fully answer your question, did she, Lisa Nandy, about how this financial hole that is causing charities to be subsidising public service contracts is going to be filled?
Yes, she danced around the question a little bit. It is encouraging to hear that the government is very aware of the gagging clauses issue. That goes back to the point I was discussing earlier around charities that are holding the government to account. But the reality is charities need funding. While there is an awareness that the government and local government are also struggling for funds, charities are really holding the fort down on their own. And we've seen so many closures within the last year alone, third sector. It's a really concerning situation. So without that funding commitment from the government, real tangible change might be difficult to come by. So I think time will tell whether the government is able to make good and also put money to the words that they've been peddling.
And that brings us on quite nicely to the last part of our whistle-stop tour of the Civil Society Covenant. What's next? What's going to happen if one side or the other doesn't stick to its side of the bargain? Do we have timelines for implementation of all of this goodwill and this resetting of the relationship? It did strike me at one point, actually. When did the reset begin? Did it reset at the time of the covenant coming into effect, which was last Thursday in mid-July? Or was it a moment of reset from the time that Labour came into government? Because the voluntary sector has been placed under huge financial pressure since the government came in, with the uplift in national insurance contributions. So yes, I do wonder if the government is wanting to put all of that behind them as well in this relationship reset. So in terms of what's next, some of you might remember the Compact, which was introduced under Tony Blair's government, but then faded away during the coalition government of the 2010s. And that was criticised for lacking teeth when either side broke its terms. I wonder, how can this be different?
There are not that many details about accountability, which is a bit disappointing. But there are several measures that have been implemented alongside the Covenant. So there's a joint civil society Covenant Council that will be made up of senior representatives from government departments as well as civil society reps. And that will oversee the implementation of the Covenant and monitor progress on its delivery. They plan to release an annual report on the Covenant to ensure that there is accountability there. So that's positive. There's also a local Covenant partnerships programme that will help implement the Covenant at local level. There are also a few other measures such as task forces, etc. And you can read more about that in our coverage that goes further in depth.
And we watch this space for the first annual report, which will be coming out in a year's time. It will be very interesting to see what has happened in the first year of the Civil Society Covenant. If you would like to read more about the document and what it means for the voluntary sector going forward, we have published several news pieces about it, as well as reactions from sector leaders. And there is, of course, our analysis piece, which you can find under the features tab on the Third Sector website. Thanks so much for listening. Our producer is Nav Pal.